Good day, my name is Christel from Frans, Klerk, Independent Technical Analysts. Wesley wanted us to kick off the show with Sibanye this week. And we can clearly see from last week's spinning candle that the share has found resistance there around 22 Rand 21. And this week's bear engulfing candle implies that the sellers are in control. We can see that on the stochastic indicator, which highlights overbought or oversold levels, that it's still in overbought territory there above an 80, and it has already broken downwards, which implies a divergence, which tells me that the share price can follow suit soon. Technically, the strong support is waiting there at around 18 Rand and 1 cent. Wesley, when Sibanye starts to consolidate below 18 Rand and 1 cent, that would be my first warning that it might be time to take profit. Now we know it's the stronger Rand that is putting all our gold counters under pressure at the moment, because we're going to look at the gold price in a second, and that instrument has continued to rally to higher levels. Now, the long-term sentiment towards Sibanye is still positive. Why? Because it's still trading above that 40-week moving average. That 40-week moving average is the line in the sand. Above it, the long-term sentiment towards the instrument remains positive, but below it, it starts to warn. Now, only when Sibanye starts to consolidate above 22 Rand 21, would we assume that the momentum to the top will continue. Below 18 Rand and 1 cent, a warning, but above 22.21, we will feel more comfortable about the share. And Wesley, I just want to highlight maybe something to remember is there is still a window on a weekly graph on Sibanye, and that is waiting there between 34 Rand 18 and 30 Rand 58. Now, the rule of windows are they always get closed. It can take weeks, months, decades, but that window will at some stage close. And we know that windows on weekly graphs are very important and should not be disregarded. So for a long-term investor, that window on Sibanye might be a nice target for higher levels. Let's have a look at the gold price, which will give us an indication of where the resistance and the support on the gold itself is. Now we can see for 2 consecutive weeks, this instrument has found resistance around $1,555. Only above it, we can assume that the gold price will rally to new levels. But $1,525 is a strong support on the gold price. And if I zoom out, we can see that previously it was a strong support on the gold price in later years. And we can see that only when the gold price starts to consolidate below $1,525, would we feel a little bit uneasy and think that it might be time to take profit on the gold. Above that, 1,555, again, levels to higher levels. Now, the stochastic indicator is very overbought at the moment, which implies the instrument is stretched, and which also implies that the probability of the instrument to retrace to lower levels is more likely. Now look carefully, Wesley. My stochastic indicator, yes, it is in overbought territory, but that shorter blue line, the shorter moving average within my stochastic indicator, has broken upwards again and wants to break that longer orange line to the upside again. That tells me that the buyers are stronger at the moment and that we can even see more higher levels. But technically that level is 1,555. Only above that we assume that the higher levels on the gold price will continue. Jessica wanted us to look at the Rand dollar. And I think to everyone's surprise, the strength in the dollar was quite a surprise. Now the dollar Rand currency pair is caught within a triangle at the moment, a symmetrical triangle. Now, in the week of the 5th of August, we assumed that, hey, the weakness was confirmed on the symmetrical triangle and that the Rand would weaken even further. But in the week of the 12th of August, as well as the 19th of August, we could see clear spinning candles on the graph, on the weekly graph. And that implies indecision. That tells me the buyers and the sellers of the Rand dollar were looking each other in the eye and they were not sure what to do with it. Now, in the week of the 26th of August, a teardrop candle formed, which tells me that there were definitely some sellers in the dollars and buyers in the Rand. Now, this week, we can see even more strength. Now, the currency pair is back in this triangle, which means it can easily retrace to this lower band of my symmetrical triangle. But more importantly, look how close this trend line is to that red line, the 40-week moving average. Now, below the 40-week moving average, we can assume that the longer term view of the rand is more strength. So even despite the fact that the rand is trading at 14.75, below this level of around 14.32, we can assume even stronger rand. Only when the rand starts to consolidate above 15 rand and 1 cent, or even above 15 rand and 7 cent, can we assume more weakness. So Jessica, I hope these levels will help you to make your decision. We can see, obviously, it's very stretched to the side, which makes the probability of more strength even more likely. Jonathan wanted us to look at Richmond. Now, we know it's one of the darlings of the market, and we know from previous conversations about Richmond that this level there around 132 is a strong resistance. Now, we can see for the week since the 22nd of July until the 5th of August, the CFR Richmond could not change that level there around 125 Rand into a support. Now, that implies lower highs because I've got a high that were lower than the previous highs, and that is seen as negative. But more importantly, I want to highlight this head and shoulder formation on Richmond. Now, I've drawn in the trend line here, which represents the neckline of the head and shoulder formation. Now, for the viewers, I just want to highlight it. There's my left shoulder, there's my head, and there's my right shoulder. Now, if Richmond finds enough sellers to bring it below this trend line, this head and shoulder formation would be confirmed. And that trend line is waiting there at 112 Rand 49. So below 112 Rand 49, that head and shoulder formation will be confirmed. Now, what is my conservative target for that formation? I'm going to take the length of my right shoulder or the left shoulder, it doesn't matter. At this, I'm just going to use my right shoulder at the moment. And if I project it downwards from where my trend line is confirmed, will be confirmed, it will take Richmond back to my 40-week moving average. And that is waiting there at around 106 Rand 56. Now we know the 40-week moving average determines this long-term sentiment of the share. So if this head and shoulder takes me back to this 40-week, it will be interesting to see whether the share can find enough buyers to lift it to higher levels, or will the sellers come in and even put more pressure on the share. So at the moment, that 112 Rand is your critical level 49. Below it, I'll be a little bit nervous. When will the warning formation become obsolete on Richmond? When the stock trades above my left or right shoulder, which is waiting there at around 120 Rand 94. Above that level, I can assume that the warning formation has become obsolete and I can be more comfortable with higher levels on Richmond. Keep in mind, these are weekly graphs that we are looking at. So the candle needs to close by Friday in order to make it a complete candle. So wait for confirmation, in other words, on a Friday close for that 112 Rand 49 for that neckline to be confirmed. Gary wanted us to look at West Coal. Also a graph with descending channels and rising channels, and we can see that it is very overbought at the moment on the stochastic indicator, which implies that the probability of West Coal to retrace for lower levels is more likely. And we can see that West Coal again this week touched and tested that upper band of the rising channel. So my upper band has been tested, and now we need to see whether it can continue to higher levels, or will the sellers come in and take the instrument back to this lower band of my rising channel. Now, again, my 40-week moving average is being tested. And only on a Friday close, when West Coal continues to trade above 156, 1 Rand 56, will I assume that the sentiment is positive? Only below it will I start to get negative about it. Now, a rising channel is a negative formation. It implies that I can easily see lower levels on the instrument, especially when this lower band of the West Coal, which is waiting, if I project it at around 1 Rand 42, if that changes into a resistance. Now, at the moment, how do I determine the length or the target of a possible rising channel? I take the width of the channel and I project it downwards from the place where it confirms. Now, remember, I need to project it because I don't know how long it's going to take the graph to eventually maybe change this bottom part of that rising channel into a resistance. But it can easily wipe it off as well because it can easily find enough buyers and lift it above to higher levels. So having said that, the target of this rising channel will be R1.11, assuming that it will confirm the lower band there around R1.44. Chris wanted us to look at Apple. Now, this week we had quite a few requests for overseas shares, which is quite interesting because with the strength in the rand, I am sure a lot of investors will use this opportunity to maybe take funds abroad. Now, at the moment, we can see on the stochastic, it is sitting in no man's land. It's sitting there at around 70, which is not stretched enough. We prefer to enter into a stock when it is oversold. In other words, the stochastic needs to be below a 20 or a 10. And when we consider taking profit on a share is when the stochastic is above an 80 or 90, because then the probability of a pullback is more likely. Now, with Apple sitting at 71, I would rather sit on my hands at the moment. I can see that the strong next resistance that needs to change into a support is around $214, and then maybe we can see $221. But Chris, I think I would wait for confirmation of either a turnaround candle of some sort or some resistance that needs to change into a support before I can assume that the stock can reach for higher levels. So at the moment, I would sit on my hands. My indicators are not stretched enough to enter into a position, and this strong shooting star candle and with this long upper shadow is also a little bit of concern, and that was in the week of the 29th of July. That tells me that the sellers were fierce and they wanted to take the stock lower. So only above that $213, $214 can I assume for more upside. At the moment, I think I'll sit on my hands.